In this video, we're going to talk about the Thor boss fight, the very first one you encounter early on in the game, which I personally consider a tutorial fight um, due to the fact that it's pretty simple, though it became complicated to if you want to do a no damage victory, right? Because it has, I think, overall 5 phases. I also want to talk about Thor's moveset and how the team uses the cutscenes in between the phases, how they transition, and how they use it as a storytelling device, whether to give a little bit more detail about the story, but more specifically the character, right? So it gives you idea of, gives you little hints of what Thor is like and how he's gonna, the role he's gonna play in the game. So let's get to it. Right off the bat, you're only using your bare-handed attacks with the shield to fight Thor. I think this goes back to the idea of using this fight as a refresher or kind of like a tutorial for new players, a refresher for the veterans, to slowly introduce you to the different weapon types, right? So obviously this one's bare-handed. It's pretty limited, so I was getting bored, so I wanted to use my rage meter here, plus throwing that boulder at Thor. It's pretty funny seeing him bouncing around. See, this is the first transition cutscene between the phases. It's pretty cool how the team manages to hide the transition, because clearly you're not always going to be in the spot where the cutscene starts. So they change the angle, zoom in a little bit on Kratos or whatever detail to hide the fact that stuff is moving around, right? Whether it's the characters getting moved around or the environment is moving around. They use techniques kind of like a motion blur, plus the zoom in, zoom out that I was talking about, to hide the fact that it's moving you so that it's always perfect for the cutscene. So yeah, so I think they did a pretty good job. I also want to mention during that cutscene where Kratos hacks Thor's belly and leaving a scar by the end of the game. So I thought that was a pretty neat detail. I missed that in my first playthrough, but going over, doing my second run, I noticed that detail, and it's pretty neat because I wasn't able to catch it the first time. Okay, so now I believe we're in phase 3. After a transition cutscene, which is another one that's well done, you get a chance to. They introduce actually this mechanic of picking up stuff in the arena, which you will notice there's a couple more. It's a little bit confusing because I thought the ones that are close by here, the statues, I thought they were the ones you could pick up, but even though they look super different, it didn't click to me right away. The stuff you can actually pick up are the metal ones there in the middle, which you'll see me use again. I think they did a pretty good job, even though it's pretty subtle, using the cutscene as a tutorial piece for that mechanic. I think it still worked out fine. Though I wish they use more of it, or at least more variations of it throughout the game and the boss fights, because I think they kind of fade away and they're mostly used in the open world encounters. Now this is the part that actually got me. Playing a bunch of games, you kind of get a sense of what's a dream sequence in games, or like stuff that kind of breaks the fourth wall. This is one of them, and they actually got me. I think what made it work is the fact that they put it just after a QTE, where you have to mash the X button or hold it in my case because I'm lazy. But yeah, my first reaction was, how did I fail that QTE? And then I realized it's a scripted thing, which ended up being pretty cool because Kratos gets knocked out or dies supposedly, and the fact that the concept of Thor using Mjolnir as a defibrillator, it's a cool idea, and I think they executed pretty well. Now we're in another transition cutscene between phases. This is one of those things where they use the opportunity, like more storytelling. In this case, you'll see after the fight actually that you're in the middle of Midgard now, like in the middle of the lake. right? And they use those tricky or those little tricks like the zoom in, zoom out, whatever. This time they zoomed in on them as they were flying through the clouds uh, to hide the fact that they're actually moving throughout the world, make it more seamless for the players. So now we're going to the final phase of the fight. I didn't really talk about the Thor's attack pattern. This is one of them, the 3-hit one. I like dodging all of them because I'm practicing for the realm shift when you get a perfect dodge. So you don't really see it. I can't tell if it's a perfect dodge at this point because I don't have the realm shift effect. But yeah, you'll see it throughout my other videos. I try to get most of those, at least like those multiple consecutive hits. Okay, so what else? So there's the ground slam. That one is looks scary, but it's it's not really. It's almost harmless really, because all you have to look at is the red circle. So it's a pretty standard move for video games. You can actually start hacking at him after the first ring because you know exactly where they are. They don't really move or pop in and out. They all come out at the same time. So yeah, so this goes back to the idea that the fight is pretty basic really. Again, what made it complicated is if you are doing a no damage run is you have to memorize all the moves and execute your tactics throughout 5 different phases. So to wrap things up, Thor's boss fight, the very first one you encounter, I still believe it's a tutorial fight. The team did a good job with introducing a bunch of new mechanics all in one single fight, really. Right, so you have the multi-phase structure, the getting players accustomed to transitions between using cutscenes as transitions between the phases. We also talked about little tricks that they use, which we will see recurring throughout the game. As a boss fight itself, I think it's pretty basic. The attack patterns are simple to predict, or easy to predict, which I think was intentional. If I were to stick to my opinion that this is a tutorial fight, so kudos to the team, and looking forward to talking about the rest of the boss fights in the game. Thanks for watching.
Consider your blood debt paid. Be seeing ya.